A very good afternoon and a warm welcome everyone present here for the NUV Media Connect conference hosted by the Journalism and Mass Communication program of Navrachana University in collaboration with Arab Open University, Saudi Arabia and Research Culture Society, Vadodara. I, Disha Sharma, the student of Journalism and Mass Communication program, is the master of ceremony for this session. The theme for today's panel discussion is Changing Trends of Media in the COVID era. We have witnessed various changing trends over the last year from the time of COVID-19. When the pandemic hit us, media has changed its ways of reporting news, be it any medium, print, electronic, or online. Now, I would like to call upon Professor Varsha Narayanan, the Academic Associate at School of Liberal Studies and Education, Navrachana University, to take it forward from here. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to you.
Good afternoon. I'm here to introduce Mr. Padma Kumar, sir. It is a great honor to introduce you, sir, because you've been my professor at Christ, and not only have I learned academics from you, but so much more. Padma Kumar, sir, is currently serving as the HOD of Department of Media Studies in Christ Team to be University, Bangalore. He has done his MPhil from Annamalai University from Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu. His interest lies in cultural studies, ecological discourses, sports studies, Tamil cinema, peace studies, and creative dynamics of dissent. He also briefly worked at the Deccan Chronicle as a sub-editor for 14 months. It is my privilege to welcome you, sir. Thank you so much. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Varsha. I hope I'm audible. Robbie sir, could you, lovely, okay. Thank you, Robbie sir, for the hands up and also for bringing me back to Navrachana University for yet another event. And also thanks to Varsha for that very warm introduction. And it's my honor and privilege to introduce the resource people of this panel. And I'm delighted to introduce them one after the other. Let me introduce Nolan Pinto first. I'm privileged to know Nolan for the past 3-4 years at least. I've met him in one particular event and for a show. And apart from that, we have had a panel discussion just 6 or 7 months ago. And now this is another one in which I'm getting to meet Nolan. So delighted to meet you, Nolan. So Nolan is a senior correspondent with India Today TV. He eventually started, he started as a reporter and news anchor with News 9, and he was there for almost 7 years. Earlier, he had also covered parliamentary and state elections. He has covered natural calamities and, of course, the pandemic in the Karnataka context. And he has a lot to share. And he's someone now who is in the field and so sees plenty of action and has his own very interesting takes on that. So we are looking forward to hearing you, Nolan, pretty soon. Let me also introduce the fellow panelists. We have with us Mr. Jignesh Baswada. Sir is a co-author, a researcher, and he's also edited the book India One, the Chai Table Book. He started his career as a columnist with the Times of India. He has also worked as a journalist with Indian Express. He was the national programming head of 94.3 FM, and he's also the programming head of Top FM, someone who comes from a diverse media background, and I'm sure he would also have a lot to share based on the background from which he comes. And finally, we have Mr. Pradeep Nair, and I've known Pradeep Nair for almost now 15 plus years, and since we are in the same city, we get to, and also in the same domain, we happen to meet each other, and he has also worked as a colleague of mine in Christ University as an adjunct faculty, and so very happy to have you here, sir. Sir comes with a rich 32 years of industry experience. He has worked for many newspapers like the Times of India, Indian Express, News Time, Free Press, and the Madhya Pradesh Chronicle in different parts of the country, not just in one place. He was there in Hyderabad, Ahmedabad, Vadodara, so the place where this conference is originating. I mean, that is the Media Connect. So he has worked in that particular city as well. He has worked in Indore and Bhopal. Currently, he's now the news editor for the Hindu in Bangalore. So Very honored to be moderating this panel. So a warm welcome to all my panelists. So let me start off by setting the context, and then I'll invite Nolan to share his thoughts. So let me take 5 to 10 minutes to establish why this particular topic that we have got today, changing trends of media during the COVID time, is of significance for us. Okay, I'm sure all of us would agree that the media does have a huge role to play in the way we perceive the world and participate in the world, right? I mean, if you want to purchase something, you tend to go to the media and then check. If you want to form an opinion about a political party, a lot of it is informed by what the newspapers say, what social media says, perhaps what the TV news channels say, and so it comes from many of the media platforms, right? And apart from that, for that matter, our own sense of self is as well at different levels shaped by what media informs us. Okay, so the role of media is something that is super significant, I would say. I mean, it may not have been the case, say, in the 17th century or 18th century, but we are living in a world where the role of, say, 21st century is a media heavy world. I mean, everything that we do has some or the other kind of a connect with media. Okay, even the conference for that matter, right? So it's technology enabled, and it reaches out to a huge set of people, and it can have its own possibilities of being amplified, right? So there is so much of power that media holds over our lives. Okay, that's something that we need to remember. But what happened to this media during the pandemic scenario? That's what is of pertinent importance for us to discuss now. Now, the COVID-19, when it came, was like a curveball, and the world was not prepared to handle it. I mean, of course, there have been pandemics in the past. We know the influenza pandemic. We have heard about the Zika. AIDS was of some. I mean, I wouldn't say a pandemic, but was a disease that had its own hold over certain areas and triggered a lot of anxiety and worry and fear, all that, right? So we did have many other ones, right? The SARS and so on and so forth, right? But this is not an ordinary kind of a disease. This is not even an epidemic. This is a pandemic, right? The word pandemic means a kind of a disease that spreads at the level of a larger, almost like a global one. It's not limited to a region, but something that has its impact on a huge area. And so you know that no continent almost has been left out in this case. I read recently that even it has gone to Antarctica. Okay, so that's what we are talking about when you're talking about the COVID-19 era. Now, this particular pandemic has come to disrupt many of the ways in which humans used to function. And it's not just with regard to, say, fields like education. I'm sure all of you have personally encountered it in your own ways. It has also come to shake up many of the industries that are there, and the media is no different. Yeah. So the media has been challenged, probably limited, and it has also probably prompted some amount of innovation to take place. So that's what we are going to have a very close study of. So we would look at it at 3 or 4 different stages. One, of course, how has the production of content in the media changed during the COVID era? Because it was a challenge, right? Consider journalists like, let's say, our Nolan Pinto, right? During the lockdown phase, how would they go out and get access to content? Of course, as journalists, they might have some amount of leeway to step out and carry out their regular duties because it's in the service of the society. So there would be some amount of allowance that is given. But nevertheless, whom can they contact and speak to? That becomes a bigger challenge to handle, right? And second kind of a problem, say if a journalist would like to go and get scientific information about what the COVID-19 problem is, and what kind of impact could it have on people who have contacted it, and how can they deal with it, what kind of precautions to take, what are the symptoms. These were queries for which most of the world was clueless in the months of February, March. Okay, and in fact, the scientific community themselves were clueless because this was not something that they knew, right? It was something that they were learning to study. They were not even studying, they were learning how to study. Okay, so that was the stage in which the scientific community was. And there was a lot of skepticism. I mean, there was a lot of doubt about whether this is feasible, not feasible, whether this can be tried out, not tried out. A lot of uncertainty. And I'm sure people in the management sector would know the VUCA kind of a reference. That is a world which is known for its volatility, uncertainty, then of course complexity and ambiguity. Right now, this is exactly the kind of context that the scientific community was also facing in the February March kind of scenario, even before that, of course. But then they didn't know that it would have this kind of a spread. They believed that, yeah, at some level it could be checked. But these are all things that they were learning on the road. So as they're heading forward, they were picking up cues and they were trying to respond to it in their own ways. And so when the scientific community themselves were clueless, journalists had this pressure of delivering credible content. So it's not just as though they can just say anything and go away. They need to produce relevant. They need to be responsible for whatever they say, right? So the news ought to be authentic. The news ought to be relevant, and the news ought to be coming from the right sources. So these are very big challenges for a journalist, especially when the sources themselves are unsure about what this pandemic is, right? So there was a series of crises. And apart from that, in terms of preparation of content, journalism, or for the matter, even advertising industry, PR industry, they were all hit because economy was hit because there was a lockdown. Some might even call it to be a harsh lockdown. There was no work that was happening in many sectors, and because of which the economy plummeted. Okay, and once the economy plummeted, advertisers who are willing to spend money in the media for promoting their products or services were a challenge. And once that advertising money was stopped, journalism industries, platforms were severely hit by and large. Okay, and so they were on a cost-cutting measure. In fact, quite a few journalists lost their jobs, and I'm sure many of you would have read how HT, for instance, had to fire more than 100 people. I was told that in Mint also the impact was there. In the Hindu had its impact, and I'm sure a lot of vernacular news platforms were severely hit, and some of them have actually closed down. Okay, and a lot of journalists were suddenly unsure how to deal with their lives, because a job that seemed to be there for them was suddenly being taken out, right? So at the personal level, journalists were hit. And apart from that, journalism was obviously hit, because if journalists are not there, then how would journalism operate, right? So people, if the stringers are taken out, if the people who collect information from the official spaces are taken out, information to the center, in the form of the city, would not have enough data. And if they are not able to have enough data, then they might have to come up with other means of running the show. So you would have seen how in some television channels, for instance, they had to run a series of opinion-based stories rather than sheer reportage. So reportage, which is so fundamental for journalism to thrive, and thereby for democracy to be in a healthy condition, was terribly hit, right? So this is in terms of the production of content itself. There were serious challenges. Then in terms of circulation, I'm sure many of you remember how either you or your parents or your relatives and others were reluctant to get newspapers. The fear was that by touching the newspaper, you might contact the virus, though there was no scientific proof to back that. There was this serious doubt. Okay, and so newspapers, magazines, and other such print-based industries were terribly hit. And I'm sure you are aware of what happened to the cinema industry, right? Many of them just fell apart into smithereens, right? And you also know how, using this as an opportunity, OTT platforms started thriving, right? And television media was also having a lull for quite a long period in terms of practicing rigorous journalism. But then they did gradually emerge, and I'm guessing that they are slowly looking forward to better times. So there is a rapid kind of revision that have happened in this particular context. So circulation was also severely hit, and there are certain areas where consumption, circulation was expanded. Like, for example, content that was going to the digital platforms was becoming very significant. Like the print, the wire, scroll, and all of them started thriving in this particular period. Because in terms of subscription, in terms of readership, they had a hike, but I'm not sure whether it translated into commercial profiteering. Okay, that I'm not sure, but then for sure, readership of these platforms did have a high during this particular period. So that's another segment. The third part is a consumption. I mean, our own consumption of content practices radically changed. I'm sure many of you still haven't gone to a theater in the past 10 to 11 months at least, right? So earlier it might have been a common practice to do it at least twice a month or even once in a week. So we might have had such practices. It was a great occasion for socialization. Now, once socialization as a healthy kind of an interaction itself has become a problem, you know how it's going to affect many other industries, right? So it did have its impact on how people consume cinema, or for the matter news. I think we know how newspaper consumption has changed, and how some of the newspapers like say Deccan Herald shifted to the Telegram platform as well. So Deccan Herald was a newspaper that was now accessed by some of the loyal readers of Deccan Herald by the Telegram app. Okay, so some of them were trying to keep themselves relevant and connected with their audience through these mechanisms, but that may not have been the case with quite a few others. So there were a lot of such revisions and challenges that emerged in the COVID era. And apart from that, as a consequence, it did have impact on the quality of journalism, and apart from that, the quality of journalism capacity to aid a healthy democracy. So that also has had its own impact. In fact, some of the theorists at least proclaim that populism was on the rise, and journalism, because of its own serious internal limitations, was unable to check that and hold the people in power accountable. So there have been such comments and criticisms as well. So it has had a lot of impacts, and I hope our panelists would open it up one after the other, and we will have enriching discussions following that. So let me now invite Nolan to set the ball rolling. Welcome, Nolan.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and a very good afternoon to the other panelists as well. Very interesting topic. When I was asked if I could be a part of this, of course, I said yes, because we have, through the entire COVID, somehow managed to survive. Yes, the vaccine is out now. We still have to take care, but we have. I'm going to focus on the practical aspects of what really happened pre-COVID era, during the lockdown, and what's exactly happening now. So let's say this, the world has certainly changed. Everyone knows that, and it has engulfed us as well, especially for television journalists. So how it was earlier, how it was today, we had access to everyone and anything earlier. You just went wherever you wanted to. But when the lockdown started, say, I remember in February, I actually traveled to Hyderabad. There was a story in Bidar about, in 2 weeks' time. I flew there maybe 6 times for that story, from Bangalore to Hyderabad to Bidar. So without any problem. And I remember people on the flight, a few of them wearing the mask. And that is when the information was coming in about China was hit very bad in the month of January and February. And people sitting on the plane were actually wearing the mask, and we were making fun of them, saying, okay, these people are wearing the mask and we're all happy and all right. And then the first death takes place in Karnataka, that's in Kalburgi. This one instance I remember, and it changed everything. One of the first persons who actually had the COVID virus came from the Gulf, if I remember right. He was in Bangalore and then went to Hyderabad. So I was asked to find out where he stayed, where was his apartment. I remember going over there. Now, remember, information was very sketchy. We did not know what to do, how to go about it. So we just went as how we would normally go. Your camera person, so in television, it's always a team, your camera person and the reporter. So I remember going to that particular apartment, speaking to the watchman, and he says, yes, that person was here. I interacted with him, and fine. And he is left to Hyderabad. On the way back, I remember reading somewhere saying that this is contagious. So, you know how psychologically it affects you. So in the car, I remember speaking to my camera person and saying my throat, I feel my throat is itchy. He says, I think I'm getting a cold. So nothing had happened. So you can understand how it was initially. We did not know what was happening. And maybe we'd have also got it if that watchman had really interacted with that person who fell sick or who had the COVID virus. So what I'm trying to say is there was a lot of discrepancies. So we had to work on that. When the lockdown started, things went haywire. The very next day, the Prime Minister did allow journalists, especially TV journalists, we could go out. If you were an accredited journalist, the police would not stop you. But the point was, people did not want to meet you. Everyone was scared. But we had to churn out content. That is what Professor Padma Kumar said. Content was it was missing, and you wanted that. You have to get your story. You have to bring out things. Buses were stopped. There was nobody on the roads. Trust me, it was the best time ever, especially if you're living in a place like Bengaluru, which globally has the sixth largest traffic. To just go out and reach places which would normally take you 1 hour and 10 minutes is just wow. All right, now we needed content. How do we do that? You talk to people, ask them, can you please send us on WhatsApp? So we had to use various tools, Zoom, WhatsApp, you name it. But people were very hesitant because earlier, if we wanted bites, because in television, I'm sure all of you all know, we have to catch bites. TV channels, our stories run on visuals and bites. Now, no visuals, no bites. What do? So the practical aspect was you have to talk to people. We had to ask them, please send us on WhatsApp. Now the people did not know what to do. They themselves did not know. Now you all know what to do. You will know, take a selfie. I mean, you shoot your own bite and you send it to us. But initially, no one knew. So that was our first practical problem. We had to explain to others. Please, turn the camera to yourself. Make sure you have that much of headroom. Look into it. Don't make it too long. Just speak to the point. These were the initial problems we had. The people understood, they started to send. I remember the PRs, especially because we needed doctors, we needed to speak to the healthcare workers, the frontline workers who were out there. They were busy. So the only access to them was through the communication department. And many a times, the hospital communication departments themselves did not know what to do, how to get the bite. So we had to train them. We had to explain to them what's to be done in order for them to send us what we wanted, especially visuals. The COVID wards, where the doctors in their PPEs were all working, they were scared to go over there. Uh, Everyone knows now that you wear your mask, you take care, you can shoot with your mobile if you're standing from far, as long as you don't have an interaction. But initially, I'm talking about March, April, and May, it was very, very difficult. Later on, our office came out with standard operating procedures because we had to get out. Trust me, the importance of a reporter or a journalist on the ground that will never go. Whether digital comes in on digital is there, it's the future, it is already there, but you still require a reporter on the ground. I am today on the way, I'm basically on a highway between Bangalore and Shivamoga. Yesterday there was this issue of a blast, so I had to go there early in the morning. I left at 5. The point is, COVID or no COVID, when something happens, you still have to run, but following the standard operating procedures, the SOPs. So what we did was, once the government gave us permission that we could talk to people and people were all right, let's not ask the person to come inside our houses. We wear our masks, we wear our face shields. All these came out. Our, we have our boom mics. So we had to keep a distance, because when you're holding a boom mic, you're actually standing very close to a person. So what really happened during COVID was that we had a rod. Initially, I remember we had just a stick. Later on, we used the curtain rods, those thin curtain rods, to give us the distance. So these are the slow changes that took place. And every time we went out, we had to come back. We had to use the disinfectant sprays. So these were the slight, slow changes that went on during that particular time. So content, we managed to get on using social media, using WhatsApp, taking care. Those were the issues. How do you trust what is happening? Because each and every person would be giving you different information. Initially, you had one scientist saying something else, another scientist saying something else, one media outlet saying something else, another one. We were very confused. There was a lot of misinformation. What is right? What is wrong? What is the right thing to do? What is the wrong thing? What is not wrong? We have to deliver. So initially, this was very difficult. And you had many people coming out saying that this equipment is the best or that equipment is the best. But how do you we have to do a story, and no story can be done without fact checking. But no, who do you fact check it with? Because your IIC or all your officials were, they themselves were confused. So these were the problems we had. So we depended a lot, and the ones who are talking about digital will be speaking about digital media will tell us that we actually used the digital medium a lot. We depended on the digital medium also, because we had to know what was happening across, not just across the country, but around the world. We had to know what they were talking about, so that when we are doing our stories here in Bengaluru, we would know exactly what's the issue. Now, I also want to also focus on, apart from that, uh, I beg your pardon. So it's not just the reporters. So I spoke to my colleagues in Delhi. So this is what's happening across the channels. How did anchors manage? How did the producers manage? The producers or the production team had no option. These were the skeleton staff who had to come to work in all the channels. They were the ones who were there making sure that the channels run. Now, in India today, what we did over here, we made sure that we had multiple teams, because the show must always go on. And even in all the bureaus, or even in Delhi or across the nation, we had separate teams wherein we did not meet our own colleagues. So if something happens to one person, another person is still there. The show must go on. In Delhi, if something happens to one office, another office functions. The show must go on. This is what happened. Anchors. I spoke to one of my colleague, Akshita, and she was telling me how earlier it was always thought that if you had to anchor, this is pre-COVID, that you needed to sit in a studio. And I'm sure everyone knows. Look what's happening here. We are sitting in front of Zoom, and we are discussing. They too did the same. They learned that you do not need a studio, you don't need a camera person in front of you to do everything. They had to manage their own costume, they learned to do their own makeup, they learned to handle a normal mobile or the equipment for them to actually anchor a complete show. So these were the trends, these were the changes that took place. And I asked my colleague, you do you suppose that this will actually continue, or now with the vaccine things change? She says no. The vaccine has come, it's good, but these changes what we have seen now will continue, because a pandemic, this is not the first and the last pandemic. There will be, in a few years later, there will be in the decades to come different problems. We have learned now what's to be done. And the importance of mojo I want to talk about, that is mobile journalism. um, I remember initially, I hope I'm not taking, I still have some time because I just have a few more points to focus on, Professor Padma Kumar. All right. So what really happened was this: we as reporters, reporters have also understood how to manage. We did not require a camera person, so that is what you all do when you all come for internship. We'll teach you mobile journalism, where we use our own mobile to manage everything, to give our lives. So this is what is happening. And finally, from the ads point of view, especially for television, the changing trends that we actually noticed while I spoke to a few people, in our own channel and also with other channels, they said that initially it was very difficult. And the only advertisements or ads that they managed to get was from FMCGs, even though they did not want to put, because people wanted, you needed your soaps, you needed anything and everything that was closely related to keeping you safe. You needed them, and they were the only ones who could advertise. So for the beginning months, all the budget that they had was put, and people were watching TV. TV suffered from July, August, September, October. It is only now that it started to pick up, and thank God the vaccine has come out. Uh, Things should be better. And I just want to say one thing in closing. Um, Man on the ground, the woman on the ground, as a reporter, that will not go, COVID or no COVID. You have to take care. COVID has taught us how you can manage on your own, what's to be done. I just hope that all those continue. And for many channels, especially for the broadcast media, it will continue. But vaccine or no vaccine, you must take care, wear your mask, practice social, physical distancing, and personal hygiene. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. A lot of very dense points packed in a very short time. And First of all, hats off to you for being on the field and addressing some of the vital concerns for our society. I mean, as journalists, you're putting your lives at risk and getting information for the society. So hats off to the efforts that you are putting in, and quite likewise to the entire tribe who are doing this kind of work. So that needs to be acknowledged. And the second thing, you also stressed on the importance of learning on the move, right? So that's something that any aspiring journalist should be aware of, apart from learning some of the most crucial basic skills of a reporter, or for the matter an editor or a journalist in general. One should also be willing to adapt and adopt to the changing scenarios. And otherwise, I'm sure many of the journalism platforms would have just. So that's a very important point that you did strike. And you also were referring to how there's a lot of content being drawn from the social media space because of the limited, limits in terms of people not being readily accessible, and primarily in the months of say Feb, March, April, right? So I just want to ask one question on that. I'm just breaking the system now because Nolan has a commitment, and he's actually doing a service for us by staying and being part of this panel. He is rushing to a reporting assignment, so maybe we'll get this part done so that he could proceed. Noel, you're talking about getting information from social media spaces, right? Now, social media is usually looked at from a condescending perspective by many journalists for reasons that it's not usually verified source, that it could be authentic, and the source could be misleading. You know the set of problems that are there, right? Now, as a professional journalist, what kind of steps do you take to ensure that the information that you draw from the digital media space is worthy, relevant, and authentic? So, could you give us some examples to help a better sense of that? Yeah.
Fact checking. I mean, you have a lot of fact checking websites now, so that is what we go through. And the channel that I work for also has it's been approved as one of the fact checking channels as such. So it's not just that. So one is, you don't just go to one website. If you hear something, you get this information. We just didn't go to one website. You check with multiple websites. You talk to a large number of people, especially if it has to do with anything that's related to health. Then you also talk to a few doctors who you know are authentic, who will give you information. And sometimes uh, two doctors might give you completely different information. And then your job as a journalist, or my job as a journalist, is to bring both of it out. You have to make sure that you say that this person says this person says this is what I'm hearing, this is what is being said. You come out with all the information. I'm not the expert, I'm just the medium over here, and my job is to actually inform the people in the best possible way. And once I understand it, I have to come out and bring out, and that's what I do, and that's what most of my colleagues also on the field do. That we bring out that information, but also stating that this particular information, uh, it varies. These are the people who actually talk about it, these are the people who differ about it. This is the information. We have to give the people the entire gamut, and that is what we try to do, and that's the only option. But we have to talk to a lot of people, we have to fact check. You just can't come out and give any information, because people are not fools.
Yeah.
You give something wrong, people will check.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing that observation, Nolan. In fact, you did highlight quite a few other roles that a journalist ought to do. It's not just about going to a place and then collecting information. First of all, verifying the source of the information, whether it's right and authentic, and also tending to analyze that. That's another important quality that a good journalist ought to have. So you could get information and it could be a good source, but yet it needs to be analyzed. And of course, interpreted in a way where your audience finds it intelligible. I mean, they are able to make sense of what you're doing. Because if you're giving information, drawing information from science and give it to the public, it may not be taken well because it could be full of jargon. So it needs to be put in a way where the commoner is able to make good sense of what is being. So thank you for striking a lot of good notes. And I hope it's fine for you to. I mean, if it's fine with you, maybe you could take leave, Nolan. Thank you so
I will
much.
do that. Thank you everyone. All right.
Yeah, on behalf of the entire panel and Navrachana University, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Nolan. So that brings us to the next person, let me invite um, Jignesh Vasuda sir to come in and share his views on how this COVID has come to upset or probably uh, some kind of impetus for trying out something new in the media sector.
Perfect. Hi, can you hear me? I hope.
Yes,
Perfect, brilliant. And good afternoon. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. The among the fact that it's an honor talking to people and interacting with the people, I'm very happy to see my very good friend Hitarth Pandya with all his hat and mustache. He's with the Navrachana University. I really hope everyone is safe. I will be taking you through two media. One will be the audio space, the radio space, and the second one will be the digital space. I was fortunate enough to be in radio for the past number of years, and at least in the last 3 years, I was heading a station where we were doing content for small towns, B and C D towns. So about 8 towns in Gujarat and 5 in Jammu Kashmir. Now, in these towns, radio was it had its own first entry. So there was no radio before this. There was no media as such, except for the regular traditional media that we had. All India Radio for a couple of hours a day was the closest one. So we had a great experience there. So let me explain. First and foremost, I will say COVID has been a very liberating experience. Okay, it may not sound, I'm not trying to be negative or funny here, but it's really a liberating experience. Now, everything can happen at whatever way possible. We have learn to adapt in the probably the best possible way at whatever stage of life we are in. COVID has really given us that brilliant ways of looking out of the box, thinking out of the box, and working. Simple example, like I'm right now traveling for a assignment, and I'm right now in a car, and still I'm attending a seminar. Now that kind of a process, I don't know if we are really able to think of it in those earlier days. Suddenly, the salary during those lockdown days, we found the salary was just way too much more than we really needed to spend. So we've really understood that COVID has given us a different perspective to everything in life, and that also includes business. Because all these years we grew up understanding that there are various kinds of businesses. There are businesses which are recession proof, where businesses which are will run irrespective of whatever happens, but there's not a single business which is pandemic or for that matter COVID proof. And then we have to restart and organize all over again. Radio, the beautiful irony of this whole space was all the media were consumed extremely well. I'm radio as such, there's no specific data, but we have larger understanding which says that radio was consumed excessively against normal times. But unfortunately, the revenues were not there to prove that. And that is the whole irony of this whole consumption of media and especially radio is we had content. We had great content which also enabled where people were connecting one-on-one with radio stations. So all our radio jockeys, one, they had learned the art of editing things at home, sitting in their own comms, sitting in their own environments, and actually learning how to deliver, create a clean audio and communicate the same thing on radio. We also learned work from home techniques as far as technology is concerned. So we could actually operate the entire song list, playlist, make changes, make ads, package them, play them, schedule them. Everything was properly done on sitting from home, which is one of the greatest learnings. The interesting point was the government used radio very aggressively to promote a lot of CSR initiatives, asking people to wash hands, asking people to wear masks, and do various other activities. The interesting development that also happened on radio was the fact that our radio jockeys all became extremely good, powerful influencers. In the process of influencers, they actually ended up picking up all those interesting content that was given by government and other agencies, asking, teaching people how to wash hands. So they married digital media and also communicated the same thing on radio on how to wash hands, what are the various things to take care to ensure that COVID does not infect you. If there's infection happening, how do you get into it? How do you go to colleges? How do you go to hospitals? How do you go to which will help you in the same process? Taking up talking to doctors, assuring people by talking to COVID warriors, assuring people by telling them that okay, COVID. A lot of things radio did. How is it not going to change after the pandemic? Well, I strongly believe radio as such is picking up well as far as revenue is concerned, though it is about 25% behind what it was last year. Radio is picking up, but will radio completely remain the same avatar that it was remaining earlier? No, it won't. It has had an alliance with radio. In the process, I believe this whole new concept of podcast is coming up in a big way. So radio is now slowly becoming audio. Most of the organizations are now focusing on creating a very parallel content where people are now attuned to listening longer. Thanks to COVID, or maybe it was just about time going to happen, because pre-COVID there were a lot of plans by Google, Microsoft, YouTube, everybody to start podcasts. A lot of podcasts had already started, and they were in the experimental phases, understanding. But the whole time spent listening was not as aggressive as we everybody wanted it to be, and that is where pandemic has kind of given that boost, saying that we'll have people who are now willing to listen longer. So podcasts which are relevant, podcasts which are what people want, are now coming up in a big way. People in audio are really looking up. Individual housewives, individual people sitting at home are actually becoming very adept and aware of the fact that they can create their own podcast very simple, easy, and actually start creating and becoming small icons within themselves. So I believe one of the biggest things that's happened in post-COVID radio is the fact that there's a lot of understanding and awareness of audio, a lot of consumption of audio, and most of the companies now, corporates and others, will have to start looking at audio and podcast as one of the more basic staple of creating content for themselves. Radio will continue to remain as important as it is, because small town radio is just begin to happen. Phase 3 of radio, that FM, private FM, is now slowly and aggressively being rolled out. So you'll find towns which did not have, which are 5 lakh and 10 lakh population, will now have radio stations coming up in their own way, have more than 3 to 4 radio stations. They'll have multiple choices to make, and pandemic will only help them, help people realize and understand and listen to radio, because that's a habit that have started to form. So that brings me to the next topic of digital. The biggest point of digital is the whole consumer behavior changing that has happened. Social media has gone in a very, very different tangent, has gone aggressively, it's boomed in a big way. If you notice, during this entire China virus space, with the ban of TikTok, suddenly nobody felt a void. Automatically, small channels, which reels became big. There are small Indian channels coming up. A lot of interesting conversations happened very fast in the pandemic time, especially during the lockdown, because people were consuming in a very, 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 very big way. If you look at the OTT platforms really thrived well. That only ensured that the consumer behavior of the people who were consuming the content that they were had grown tremendously. And most importantly, almost everybody who was anybody was always available on the social media channels. So social media suddenly became the buzzword. If you notice, there was a time during the lockdowns when you just randomly open an Instagram, you'll find every alternate person doing a live. Either they'll be connecting with somebody, they'll be doing talking with somebody. The whole concept of communication within the community also became brilliantly accessible in the form of Zooms and the things that we're using now. Like, I don't remember having spoken to my cousins so aggressively, so often and so many times as much as I did during the pandemic. So suddenly this whole social media is now become a community media, and community media has become technology driven. A lot of interesting dimensions that are going to happen, predictions that are going to happen in the social media space. There'll be a lot of jobs and creative skills that will be valued, which will more than ever. Earlier there was a need for social media, but now everybody felt that they had to have be on the social media. Corporates felt that they need to have a social media channel, but now using it to propagate the content, their format is very, very aggressively valued. So suddenly social media jobs will suddenly become big. A lot of video content will continue to rise. Production and demand will continue to rise, and the production and demand of this video content will aggressively lie on being as honest and as clean, and as unprepared, or shall I say, slightly amateurish things will be seen as more honest. The more you package it and create it, the more comfort people will not experience. The more authentic the content, the better it will be. Honesty, empathy, and social consciousness will always will on social medias. A lot of social listening has begun to come up in a big way. There'll be community engagement, and there'll be a lot of marketing strategies which will be based on social listening. So what people are doing, how people are engaging themselves, how they're connecting, how they're contracting with each other, all those things will be aggressively valued, watched, and replicated and used as marketing strategies. We'll also be constantly adapting to new technologies and consumer change needs. All these, I believe, will add and make a lot of value during COVID times. I think we are ready to go digital. What was given as a pointer saying that no, we will be the billion digital set of people by 2030. I think that 2030 will now become 2025 maybe. We'll be billion digital far faster than we anticipate. So all in all, while the times have been difficult, pandemic has been a very difficult thing for all of us. For the media, I think it will just be a complete 360 180 degrees change, and there'll be a lot of various things happening, and people will adapt in a big way. Work from homes of the world will really big out come out in a big way. Yeah.
Thank you, Jignesh, for keeping the time, and apart from that, bringing a lot of very interesting insights about what's happening in the radio and also in the digital domain. So one of the things that you highlighted was how innovation is taking over tradition, right? So given the challenges that are there, one may not be able to cling on to some traditional values, but be open to adapt
Very much.
and also innovate and make a difference. So that was one of the key points that you shared. And apart from that, there is also a growing climate where one has to turn digital or almost die. I mean, when I say die, not the people, but the
Absolutely.
industries and the practices, right? So
Very
it's
much.
with regard to languages as well. I mean, if languages are not digitized, I mean, the knowledge from the languages are not digitized, the scope of them surviving is very, I mean, it's likely to diminish faster, right? So the need for digitalization is accelerated today. And as you rightly pointed out, it may not be 2030, it's 2025, or probably even before that, right? So those
Very
are
much.
some rapid shifts that are happening. I'm sure there would be questions and other observations coming from our audience a little later. So we'll get back to
Perfect.
that. And also, thank you for highlighting the importance, the significance of the podcast.
Very
Podcast
much.
is something that has come to, listening is at a premium, and people are aware of the thought that who would listen to radio, gadget, and other such things. But podcasts have come to almost speak and create a kind of intimacy with the listener, and it has changed the dynamics of how media is consumed. So it has added a new dimension to media consumption. So that is another point that you did highlight. So thank you for all those inputs, and
Thank you.
we'll
Thank you.
get back for more in the near future. So let me
Sure.
invite Dr. Pradeep Nair to share his views on how the print industry has responded to these challenges, and also his observations on what media in general is facing in the context of COVID-19. Welcome, sir. Pradeep, sir, are you there?
I think Pradeep sir has disconnected due to some network issues.
Okay, hopefully he'll join. And
We'll
okay,
move
so
on next. We'll have him at last once he comes back.
yeah, okay. So could you alert? Could
Yes,
you
sir.
alert?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, fine. So until then, maybe I'll probably continue the conversation with Mr. Jignesh. Jignesh, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Great. Yeah. So could you elaborate on how this transition from an era where people felt that radio, or for the matter, audio platforms are almost on the decline or vanishing? Podcast as a means of connecting with the audience has come to change the dynamics. Could you elaborate on that part?
Sure. Essentially, if you look at the US market, now average time spent listening in the US market is about 8 hours per week. Okay, and this is an evolved market that we're speaking of. People in the range of 35 years and up are listening. About 55% people are listening to podcasts. At least 60% plus people are tuned to podcasts in the US at any point of time. Now the scenario here is that says when people have gotten into the habit of understanding and taking things, in at large distances, large time, spending a lot of time listening to things, they are really connecting well with the podcasters. And that's where I believe India is ready to shift and take into the time spent listening format, where they're actually going to have longer listening format. Because we remember when we made ads during the 2001 2005 space, we had a lot of time where we actually ended up making only 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20-second ads. Now these 25 20-second ads where all of them were taken up, consumed as too long, and too bulky ads. But now people are ready to listen to 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute ads, and that shift is where the entire industry is going to, where they're trying to say we are willing to listen to longer areas, longer times, and podcasts will play a larger role in that space.
Yeah, thank you for pointing out how the pandemic has come to bring about a radical shift in terms of how look at consumption of content and how the radio has become or the audio platforms have become a space for more deeper connections rather than a very superficial scratch the surface kind of a model. So that's a very significant shift that we are observing. In fact, I started listening to podcasts during the lockdown phase. Prior to that, my students did tell me that, sir, you should listen to this podcast, that podcast, and all that. But then it is during the lockdown season that I too got connected with the process of, consuming podcast. And apart from that, I did a course on podcasting. That was another interesting thing that happened during this pandemic. And I understood how rich a platform it could be to address on very niche areas. That's the other thing about podcasts, right? So people might be interested in a certain kind of cuisine. So a podcast could be on that, or people could be interested in certain kinds of philosophy. Podcast could be on that, or it could be in terms of certain lifestyle. It could be specifically on that. So areas that were not getting covered in the regular kind of media production, content production, are now getting addressed because podcasts have come to address those kind of concerns. So that's a very interesting
To the level that I can actually create a podcast which can cater to, say, a niche of about 100, 200, 500,000 people. A radio station cannot afford to say that today. So I think it's just
exactly
far more niche.
right, right. Thank you, Dignesh. I'm glad to have Pradeep sir with us. We had a slight jitter, but then thanks for coming in, and hopefully technology should keep us going.
Yes.
Pradeep sir, please share your thoughts on media during the COVID era.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, I got disconnected. I mean, very ironically, when the power went off, there was no problem.
Okay.
But when the power came on,
okay,
the Zoom browser closed, that window closed. I don't know why. I have no clue. Anyway, so good to be back here, and good to be virtually in Vadodara, because that was a place where I used to be for a couple of years when Indian Express launched its edition in Vadodara, mid 90s, early 90s, I mean like 94 or 95 or something like that. So good to be there, and thank you for this opportunity for speaking to you. I will try to share the screen, share a screen just to get some, so that, we can, let me see if it works. If it works.
So you can share the screen.
Yeah, let me see if it works. Yeah, it does. Good. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Good. Okay. So, like others have been saying, like, this pandemic has disrupted everyone's lifestyle. Everything has changed. Economy has changed. The social norms have changed. It has also had its political connotations. When an election is held, obviously how well a government has, tackled this pandemic is obviously does become an election issue, and to that extent, health even is getting politicized to a certain extent. Well, COVID-19 has changed everything in the world. And journalism, and especially the print media, is no exception. It has touched every human being. It has touched every segment. 2019, and we really don't know what happened. Like, in the sense, we didn't do anything much in 2020. To that extent, a lot of people were saying that, okay, that year didn't exist, in the sense, nothing, like, only tragedy and disaster and very depressing things happened during 2020. And then we are now in 2021, and hopefully things are getting better. We have vaccines, and even otherwise, the human population as such is able to counter the threat from the virus. And some countries are still badly hit. I'm sure they will get better as it goes, as time goes by. Now, as we all know, this is one of the most significant impacts of the pandemic. I mean, it goes without saying. We are all we are all doing that right now. Like, two people are participating in the seminar, like, while they are on the move. And I am myself in Kerala, though I work in Bangalore. I am in Kerala, and I'm working from Kerala. A number of employees, our employees, not just in my newspaper organization, but in other newspaper organizations also, they are in their hometowns, and they're working from home. They have to go to their homes for various reasons. So it's now not just working from home, it is actually working from anywhere. Actually, you don't really need to be at home. It is work from anywhere. It's not, that's the way even during 2020, even work from home has evolved to that extent. It has evolved to that extent, and it's not just work from home, it's work from anywhere. You can even be participating in a seminar while you're on the move in a car, or in a vehicle. You are able to do that. I mean, so that has been the most significant change. And this is particular significance for the print medium because, well, reporting you can do, you are out on the streets. I mean, you are wherever, you can be anywhere and then do the reporting. But there is the other side of journalism, or especially newspapers and even other media organizations. That's the content processing aspect of the entire thing, like the news desk. News desk is like, where we all sit together as a team. So we are all in a team, and it was simply unimaginable that we can bring out like 20, 24 pages or 20 pages or whatever, with people sitting in different parts of the country. So different pages are actually being made at the homes of a number of sub-editors and chief sub-editors and, the desk persons. Designers are sitting somewhere, sub-editors are sitting somewhere, the news editor is sitting somewhere, the reporters are sitting somewhere. And newspaper production is actually about putting together stories all together and, bringing out one newspaper of X number of pages. Could be 16 pages, 20 pages, or 40 pages, or whatever. So it is all about, working together as a team and clicking together. So it is extremely important to have a lot of coordination. And initially we wondered how we would be able to do this coordination if people are all going to sit in different places. Because, like, if you are in one room, if I want to tell something to two people, two of my colleagues, I need to just tell that aloud. Both of them can hear, or many others can hear, and they will all get what I want them to do. Now, if four people are sitting in four corners of the country, and if I have to say something, either, of course, I can use the chat, or I can use one of those, audio conferences or something. But it is definitely a disruption from the very seamless way in which we used to work, like, in one office, in one room, like, 5 or 6 people or 10 people working together in a room, and, that sort of. But then the fact is that we have all got adjusted to it. So, of course, it's not so easy, because when I'm talking to someone on the phone, there are 2 other people who are trying to call me on the phone. And plus there are 2 other people who are leaving messages on the WhatsApp group. So it's not been easy, but the lesson that we have learned from this is that nothing is impossible. I mean, we can adapt. I mean, we can. I mean, nothing is going to come to a standstill. It is difficult. I'm not saying it's not difficult. It's quite difficult, but it is happening. Like even for radio stations, like the presenters are sitting in different studios. I mean, like many of the broadcast journalists have turned their rooms, their homes into studios. I mean, with lighting and proper camera setup, everything. So, and with a lot of coordination happening in the back end. So this is one major trend that has happened, where we are able to do something which we used to do from a particular room, like 4 or 5 people sitting in one room and bringing out a newspaper, putting together X number of news stories into X number of pages and bringing out that publication, a magazine or a newspaper. Now we are able to coordinate between among different cities. I mean, people sitting in different parts of the country and doing. Now, this is another significant change which we have seen during this time, where we journalists are like the other panelists said. I mean, they have to be out. They have to be out on the streets, out on. So there are press conferences, there are seminars, meetings. You need to go and meet the source. The source might have to. They might have some documents to give you, etc. All these things. Now, nothing of that sort happens. Like, it's mostly on call. I mean, video call or an audio call. There's a lot of exchange of information digitally. So like we are doing right now, we are using this particular platform to organize a seminar and connect everyone together. Journalists are doing that now. Journalists, which is why it is significant, is because this is not something that we thought we could do. And even if someone wanted to do that, it was assumed that it's not the right way. You have to go and meet people. You can't be like remotely working. Like you need to be in the office. You can't be at home and work. You can't be sitting at home and connecting with somebody on a WhatsApp call or a Zoom video call or something like that to have a meeting. You need to travel. You need to meet that person in person. You need to meet. Now those things have changed. Now this is definitely a new trend. And not only this, I mean, we are using many other forms of technology to get our work going. Now, this is something that you can imagine, especially when social media came itself. There has been really a huge burst of information in the public domain. It's not that there was no information in the public domain before, but the major difference is that with social media coming, there is a real explosion of information or data on the public domain, which everyone who has an internet is free to put information in the public domain, which was not the case in the pre-COVID era, pre-social media era. Now, add to that COVID. So that added really that it made it worse in a sense. Like, so people were consuming a lot of information through social media. We really don't know from where this information is coming. Of course, you would have seen umpteen videos and audio messages and other text messages telling you how to keep yourself safe from COVID, from contracting the virus, what home remedies you can do, all sorts of things. One really doesn't know whether they are scientifically proven or not. The worst case is that you really don't know the person who is in that video clip, in the WhatsApp video, talking to you. Who is the person telling you to do this? We really don't know. We really don't know who that person is. For all that you know, that person is telling the truth or is a fact. But then we need some sort of understanding as to who that person is. Is that person a doctor? Is that person a scientist? Is that person a teacher? Who is the person? No idea. We don't even know the person's name. There is somebody on a video telling you, drink 2 glasses of water, have haldi, do this, do that, everything. So one really doesn't know. So this was a huge challenge. And, you know, I mean, like Nolan was also saying, like, you know, journalists also got exposed to a lot of information flowing in through the social media. So we had to do our own fact check. And as a lot of you would have studied in your classes, I mean, there are many ways in you can fact check information. One of the basic things, one of the basic ways, I mean, which I'm sure you all do, and probably all journalists also do, is to cross-check with some authoritative source whether that information is right or wrong. You can do things like reverse search on Google. I'm sure you all know that. If you get an image and if it looks a little sensational, just as you search for a keyword in Google, you can also do a reverse image search in Google to find out where all a particular picture has appeared before, if at all it has appeared. So if somebody is passing on image or a video which you think is very suspect, you can upload that. You cannot upload. You can save it on your hard drive, and then computer, and then you search that on the net. You know that. So journalists also do pretty much a lot of that. And one thing which probably others can't do, but journalists do, is they call up people. They call up like if there is some story doing the rounds about examinations of universities, like board exams or university examination, and if there is some information that is being spread very rapidly on the social media, and people don't know whether it is right or wrong, and journalists also don't know whether it's right or wrong, what do journalists do? I mean, journalists will immediately call up the university boss, like the vice chancellor, somebody in the vice chancellor's office, or the exam board, or someone, and tell them that, well, there is some such information going around in the social media. Is it right or wrong? So we will get some sort of confirmation. So journalists had to do a lot of that. Now, it's not just about examinations or any other thing, but a lot of that information was about COVID, obviously. Like, the types of the symptoms, what you should do, what you should not do. I mean, like, for how long the virus will survive outside a human body, etc. If you remember during May, June, and all, there were stories of how the virus can stay airborne for a long time. So that was a revelation halfway through the year last year. So earlier people thought that it never happened. Later researchers found out that it does. It can stay airborne for quite some time. So around that, centering around that, there were a lot of messages and all going around. So what journalists typically do to verify these things is they call up designated authorities. So if it's something to do with health, they call up doctors. If it is something to do with space or something like that, they go and check with somebody who is an authority in space or something like that. So that is what. So during the last year, journalists had to do a lot more of this fact checking and verification, because there was a lot of information which was floating around, which was not.
Pradeep, sir,
Yeah.
maybe a minute or two.
Yes, done. Almost done.
Okay, thank you.
Now, what this has given rise to is a boost in the credibility of the institutional media. So by institutional media, I mean not the social media, the traditional media, or where the media is an institution, unlike a Twitter handle or a Facebook account or an Instagram handle or something like that, which is usually an individual or a small group. So this has given, so this one of the trends is that, it has boosted the image or credibility of the established media, because people know that journalists will be able to do this fact verification, fact checking, and it is better. So though generally everybody sort of runs down the media saying that, it is
I guess sir has got connection problem. Yeah, so I hopefully sir should join in a minute or two. Shouldn't be a problem. Until then, maybe I thought I could bring in some very interesting observations. Um, so Pradeep sir, whenever you're back, kindly speak. Okay, yeah. So there is this very interesting article that I recommend for all to check, and this is titled "Misinformation in India: A Reflection of the Society," and this is primarily in terms of the coronavirus related claims, and this was published in newschecker.in, a fairly interesting platform and known for its fact-checking credentials. And there is a journalist named Nikita Vashista. I mean, I'm proud that she's one of our students who compiled this particular story. It's titled "Misinformation in India: A Reflection of the Society," and it has got some very fascinating observations, which I would like to bring to our notice. Uh, Coronavirus-related claims surged in the month of March when India's first lockdown was announced. So in Jan, this is what they had taken stock of. In Jan, it was seven that was there. Then seven. Number of claims that were being made about coronavirus. In Jan, it was 7. In February, it was 34. In March, it was 122. And then April, it was 73. May 60. Then June 30. July 31. So it started declining. So you see the surge during the month of March, when plenty of people are making their own random claims. Who claimed that you could probably take disinfectants so that the coronavirus inside you could be, COVID-19 could be cleared off. And
I'm back.
Great. Yes, sir. Please. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'll just carry on from where I left. I'll take 2 minutes.
Yeah. Sure.
Am I audible now?
You're audible, sir. You're audible.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, the screen is visible.
Yeah, sir. I think
the screen visible?
Screen is not yet. I think it's loading. Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Sir, it says that your network is a little low. Maybe it might help if you could switch off your video and then speak. It will.
Unstable.
Yeah.
Yes. That might help. Yes. One. Okay.
Yeah, your screen is loading, sir. I'll alert you once it's there.
Yeah. Is it okay now? Is that okay?
It's still loading. Yeah.
Oh. Okay, no problem. I will keep talking. I'm audible, right?
Yeah, you're audible, sir. Yeah. We are able to see the screen as well. Go ahead.
So what I was trying to tell you was Okay. So this has boosted the credibility of the institutional media, because generally people started checking and verifying the information they got on social media by seeing whether it has been carried by any major publication like the Hindustan Times or the BBC or the Times of India, or etc., etc. So it has sort of boosted the credibility of the institutional media. Now, the other trend, as you can also imagine, is the large adoption of online media to consume news. So everybody is on to the mobile phones and the laptops and the platform and tablets, etc., to get on the news. Of course, you know that in between there was a scare regarding newspapers, whether newspapers themselves are carriers of the virus. So a number of people subscribing to newspapers. So that also led to it. And this is, one reason is that, people have been at home. So, they started consuming a lot of information on their devices. Now, another fallout of the has been, like what has been mentioned by Professor Patkumar as well as by the other panelists, was that there has been severe revenue crunch. The revenue flow into media organizations dried up as a sort of a knock of the hit that the economy took. So the advertisements dried up because generally the economy was not doing well. So the establishments were open.
Okay, I guess we lost Sir once again. Um, right. So hopefully Sir should join again. Let me just add a few final points so that we have some amount of clarity. I was talking about the fact checker part. Very interesting observations. One is that majority of fact check claims were in the form of an image. So most of the fake news travels in the form of images. That's one thing that the study reveals. And the second one is image with text is the second most um, potent form of spreading fake news. The third one is videos, in the form of videos. And the fourth one is in the form of text. So what we understand by this is that fake news travels faster through visuals. And that's a trend that we are finding now. And so visual literacy is something that schools of journalism, media studies, uh, communication should take up as a priority and work upon. Yeah. Yes, Pradeep sir is back. Yes. Sir, yeah, your network bandwidth is
Yeah,
still, that's what we are reading. So
yeah,
if
I'm
you could,
almost done.
so if you could switch off the video, then it might
Okay. I'll
allow us
switch
to
off the
join
video.
the flow.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have done.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
So I'm almost done. The last couple of points. So the point was that there was a severe drying up of revenue into the newspapers and newspaper establishments. It had two effects. One is that it in turn increase the misinformation and disinformation that is going around, because a lot of newspapers closed down, smaller newspapers closed down. So there are fewer journalists reporting what is actually happening and giving a very objective view of what is happening. So that had an effect. And generally, like, there was newspapers had to reduce the numbers, had to sort of reduce the number of staff, etc. They had to wind up editions, etc. Not, it has happened to almost all newspapers. Everyone has had to do something to tackle this difficult situation. Now, those a lot of newspapers too come up with the online platforms, like you said, like different newspapers went on social media platforms like Telegram or Facebook news feeds or similar uh, platforms, and also they introduced the paywall. So they brought in paywall, wherein newspaper subscribers had to pay for the information that they consume. The one last point I want to mention here, and I will wind up with that, is that this indirectly sort of have brought us to a situation where people are actually paying for good content. They're actually paying for good content because they're forced to now, in a sense, because that's the route now. That's the way ahead. So we have seen the subscription for digital platforms increasing, and also the revenue from subscriptions to digital media increasing. So that has been, so just to sum up, it has been a great learning experience for everyone. This pandemic, we have learned to adapt. We have found newer ways to move forward, and certain things that were thought impossible are now possible. And people are also realizing that it is better, like, online medium is a much easier medium to consume. And they have also realized that, sometimes the online medium is actually cheaper than the it is much cheaper to subscribe to a newspaper online than to actually get the physical newspaper. The subscription costs are much cheaper for the online version. And that's a good trend, because the more people subscribe to a newspaper, the newspapers have to rely less on advertisements. They have to rely less on advertisements. And to that extent, they are, more like, they can do much better journalism, that when they are not, under the influence of advertisements or anything like that. I won't take too much of your time. Probably we can answer a lot of questions, and that might be a better way forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Despite the technical challenges that we have faced, you have made a lot of crucial points for us to take the discussion ahead. One of the last points that you made was in terms of the change in trends, in terms of how news is accessed and how news businesses could possibly see a silver lining in that change. As most of us would know, India has one of the cheapest rates fixed for newspaper reading. I mean, in any other part of the world, you check in Hong Kong or in US or Europe, or even for the matter in Pakistan, the price of a newspaper is higher than what we have in India. Okay, so in India, newspaper is dirt cheap. Okay, and so thereby they become overtly dependent on advertising, and that's what Sir was rightly hinting at. And so there's a need for us to plug that, and maybe getting access, paying in the online mode and consuming information could be kind of a silver lining. Thank you for striking that note, sir, and also for pointing out that who is the right source is always a challenge for good journalism. And you did mention that. So, for example, some journalists thinks that it's okay to go and talk to a doctor about COVID-19. Then I think it's still not a good call. One needs to talk to the right kind of a doctor, right? So it can't be just any doctor. It ought to be, say, an epidemiologist or a virologist or a community disease expert. And that's when the right source has been tapped upon. So that's another important point that you highlighted. And yes, and you also talked about information overload. So the challenge for journalists to clear off the clutter and pick up that which matters most and and deliver or packaging it, rightly packaging it, delivering to the audience. There is a lot that you have covered. Thank you very much, sir. So now I think it's time for taking a few questions. I guess there are some two or three. Let's pick up one after the other and then look at it. So there is one from the MC.
Yeah.
MC, could you tell us your name so that we put a name to the question, I mean, to source. The question is, how do you maintain consistency and quality of content? Maybe Jignesh, would you like to respond to that? And then
Sure. Quality and consistency essentially is something. I'm sorry for the background noise, but I'm traveling, like I told you. Okay, the quality and consistency of content essentially is also aggressively driven through the feedback from the listeners. One, of course, there's the credibility issue, which of course is also dependent on the person who is delivering the content. Having said that, the feedback on what people like, what they don't like, what they appreciate based on the views, because thanks to digital media today, you know exactly how many people are listening to you, what is the age group of people listening to you, the feedback they give you are directly coming to you, and that is a brilliant derivative of what is the kind of content you give out to them, dish out to them, and basically what is the consumption pattern based on that. I hope that answers the question.
okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that there's a sharper sense of who the audience is today. And apart from that, user-specific content delivery is something that a lot of media houses are working on. In contrast to that, in a journalistic domain, Pradeep sir, could you tell us, should journalists look at it in terms of a user-specific content production or in terms of addressing public good? How do you see this challenge?
I hope you're referring to me, right?
Pradeep
Yeah.
sir, I was asking for
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. The challenge with regard to good quality journalism, that's what you mean? Good quality content?
Okay,
Is
so,
that what you mean? I didn't fully get your question.
Okay, I'll rephrase it, sir. Jignesh was referring to the ways in which, say, entertainment media or other forms of media might produce user-specific content. So they cater to their specific taste. Whereas in contrast, journalism might have to
Yes.
see it as a public and prepare content. So how do you see that juxtaposition, sir?
Yeah, that's a challenge. Yeah. So what nowadays the general trend is to have a good balance between what actually the users want and what the journalists want the readers to read. or the consumers consume, like, you know, so it has to be a good balance. Because that sort of balance is what an institutional media can bring in. The problem with social media is the problem of what we all know as echo chamber. You tend to hear and read what you want to read and hear, not something else. So that is a major drawback of social media. So that has to be corrected, because that is not a good tendency. That's not good. So what a curated media, like what an institutional media brings out, a traditional media brings out, like a newspaper, you might get stuff that you actually want to read, but you will also be exposed to which generally you might not know, but it will arouse your curiosity to read about it and understand it. So that's what I think, you know. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yes, you are. Absolutely, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. So, if I could put it slightly different, you mean to say that how much of snacks, how much of food is the clarity that the news platform should have, and accordingly deliver to the audience's needs and also wants. So,
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. There are quite a few questions, and MC, do we have another 5 minutes? Is that okay? Robi, sir?
Yes, yes, definitely, sir.
Okay.
We have time till 3:45.
Oh, wonderful. Then we'll take
Yes, yes.
Oh, there is time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, please.
Okay. So the next question is from Raj
There's
Dave.
one question.
Yes, one from Raj Dave, and the question is how difficult it has been to report during COVID era. Pradeep, sir, maybe you could address this. I mean, what are the challenges? I mean, you would have heard about how reporters have faced challenges in terms of. I mean, Nolan did add, but you can definitely add a lot more to that, given your interactions. Yes, sir.
Definitely, yes. Especially for the, as you know, like, you know, March 20, like during March, I mean, where Bangalore, you know, like, you know, the numbers started rising slowly, and the lockdown came on March 25th. From then onwards, all of us haven't been going to the office, primarily because of fear of health, fear of contracting the virus. To that extent, it has been difficult. And as I told you, bringing out a newspaper, not the reporting part, but other part of it, like the putting together the paper has a challenge. It's not easy. I mean, see, it's because it involves a lot of coordination. And when all of us are sitting together in a room, that coordination is much, much, much easier. But when you have to make umpteen calls and look into umpteen WhatsApp messages, coordination becomes more difficult. For reporters, obviously, they have to be out on the field, and especially for the photographers, reporters can still source a lot of information through phone calls and video conferences and, you know, other methods like text messages and all. But the photographers have to be on the field. They have to be there. Of course, they can source pictures from someone, but again, that is not like you yourself going to a particular place and shooting a picture for yourself. So there is a huge difference. And to that extent, it has been risky. So of course, they have taken all precautions. They have been there out on the street, and, like, you know, so all newspapers have been carrying pictures. And as said, they also have been out on the streets for television media, have been there. So it has been difficult, but it has been difficult, and have to take care. That is it.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Also, I'm just curious, what are the other kind of challenges that, say, reporters might have faced? For example, there is a paucity of information, right? So while there is an information overload that we find in certain contexts about the COVID one, credible, actually, paucity of not necessarily positive information, but positive, credible information. So how was, let's say, the Hindu, it was getting addressed?
Yes.
And especially,
so it is difficult. I mean, especially with regard to information.
sorry, I'll just add one more point. I'm just specifically asking because when there is a paucity of information, then there is a lot of anxiety that people could develop, and it could lay the foundation for rumors and other kinds of vicious content to take over, right? So, as a person coming from institutional background, I mean, institutional media, I mean, news platform, how do you see this problem, and how was it addressed, let's say, at the Hindu?
Um, it is difficult. A lot of information during the last year was with regard to COVID. Of course, later times, I mean, we had a lot of other information coming as well. For example, once colleges and schools started reopening, there were a lot of messages going around as to when will colleges reopen, will students have to come to college, they have to be on campus or not. So whether examination going to be held on this particular day, for which level, etc. So we have had to make umpteen phone calls to the concerned people to get the accurate information. Now, there have also been cases where people didn't know, because a number of institutions have still not decided when to actually open physically, like physical campuses, when they have to open the physical campuses. So on one side, you have social media messages going around all over the place that something is going to happen. But when you go back and ask people for confirmation, they say that, well, we haven't decided anything. We don't know. We don't know anything ourselves. So we haven't decided. So that creates a bit of confusion. So it has been a difficult time. Now, with regard to COVID itself, most of the information was about the disease and with various aspects of the disease, about the virus, how it spreads, and etc. That also has been difficult. If you remember, there were a lot of, sometimes even contradictory information coming from even established professionals, doctors themselves talking different things about the same subject. So the virologist saying something, epidemiologist saying something. What I remember is something very similar. I can remember is in mid-90s, when there was the plague which broke out in Gujarat and Maharashtra border. And I was at that time in Baroda when plague happened. So what we remember, like, was in for the first edition, we got information that 10 people had died of a mysterious illness. And there was rumor, of course, that was a pre-social media era, but people were saying that, it is plague. And that was exactly 1 month after the floods. So by the second edition, by around o'clock, midnight, the death toll had gone on to 25. And one of the things that we did was to call up the Sayajirao Hospital, the main hospital in Baroda at that time, to find out what exactly is this disease, plague, and what do's and don'ts and what. So many of the doctors told our reporters, saying that they have only learnt about plague in their school textbooks, college textbooks. They haven't treated anyone with plague. So they need to really go back to the textbooks. They have to go back and give more credible information. I am reminded of that during COVID, because even now, if you ask people, there are a variety of information regarding the disease coming. So this is something very similar. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. So we have to live with that. I mean, I don't think there is an easy solution to it. The only thing is that just make sure that, you try to source your information from very credible and authentic source.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you also for hinting that in moments of uncertainty, we don't need to fill up content with unsure assertions. So thanks for also pointing that out. And there are occasions like the pandemic where even the authentic sources themselves are clueless, and we need to accept those sort of limitations. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Now, Pranshul Shah has asked a very interesting question, and Jignesh, sir, maybe you could take this. And if the radio jockeys are more active on social media rather than on the radio stations, is that better to audiences and increase their engagement? So, yeah, I mean, even in journalism, this Twitter, other platforms, right? So, how do you see this?
So no, I mean they're adequately active on the radio. At the same time, they're also active on the social media. We find it more visible because we can't, whenever you tune into a radio station, you don't really always have the chance to find them on the radio station. Having said that, on the social media, whenever you tune in at any point of time, you can have them on the feed. So that is the only reason. But yes, of course, they have found their calling. They found the fact that they can create a lot of branding for themselves. They can create a lot of name for themselves in the social media, and that is a very personal space where they can actually have stuff of their own. They can have content of their own. They really don't really have to follow any guidelines as such, which is dictated primarily by the institutions that are governing them in the radio space. Because right from the governmental guidelines, a lot of things are restricting them in certain ways to opine, to give their own personal opinion, political opinion on people, and that is where these guys are really making a great name for themselves because they are intelligent people who are well read, who are well informed, who are doing a good job for themselves on radio. Because when you put them on the radio station, you're actually giving them the responsibility of connecting and talking to a million people in one link. Obviously these guys are intelligent, so I think that is exactly where this happens. It's only primarily our perception. It's like saying that the moment you want to buy a laptop, you find suddenly a lot of laptop ads popping up in the newspapers. So it's just the moment of your seeing it. I mean, I think they're doing equally a good job, and I think they're doing balancing it very well.
Yeah, one thing is perhaps maybe because we are more active on the social media, we might see it more powerfully etched out. So that could be one reason, as Jigneshwar is.
Very much, very much, very much.
Thank you. Ishita is asking one question for all of us. And dear panelists and honorable moderator, great session. Thank you on behalf of the panel. What are your views on print media? Will it survive or will it shift to digital medium? Because nowadays people prefer getting subscription for e-paper to access it anywhere rather than taking out some time of the day to read the newspaper. So maybe Pradeep sir, you could start first and followed by Jignesh, and I'll as well add.
Yeah. Yes. Well, this is a question that I have been asked many times. Will print media survive or fold up? But what I would like to tell is that print media is not going anywhere. I mean, it will be there. It will be there. There is no doubt about it, because there are a number of positives that you attach to the print media. There is a lot of quality that comes along with the newspaper that you can hold in your hands and read. So, which, it is about experience. It is something like the comparison that I always make is with the theaters, movie theaters. Although we have umpteen ways of watching a movie, and we still go to a movie theater. Those who enjoy watching a movie in a big screen. I mean, there is no comparison to watching a movie in the big screen. And you can, of course, if you want to watch, you can even watch it in a small smartphone. But imagine the difference of watching a movie on a smartphone and watching it on screen. I mean, there's a whole lot of quality it comes along with in the big screen. So it is something similar about the print medium, because the print medium has got a certain characteristics and qualities there. What is going to happen, of course, is that we are going to have fewer number of newspapers and magazines that we have already seen. I mean, like a lot of smaller newspapers might have had to close down because of revenue crunch. There are fewer newspapers around, so that is going to happen. Now, e-paper also, I can see, like I told you during my talk, that there have been an increase of digital subscription plus subscribing, not just for the e-paper. People are preferring paper, and also people are preferring the general content on the website.
Thank you. Thank you for those observations.
Mine is more or less the same lines. My only analogy that I can give you is two forms. One is when you have a proper Gujarati thali coming and you don't want to go a la carte sometimes. When you have every curated content coming to you in various forms from various people around the world in one single newspaper, holding it, there's a different kind of experience. I know a lot of youngsters who are really shifting to things like in shorts and all the small micro news sites, but I still believe there's a huge opportunity, and I don't think the print is dying anytime soon for sure. yes, like he rightly said, Pradeep ji said, it will definitely reduce in size in the sense of number of publications. It will also become aggressively interest driven, and it will also become very aggressively opinion driven. Like if I watch the India Australia match, which I watched it live, but I really want to know, have analysis of the same. I want to know what happened behind the scenes. A lot of journalism digging will go into that space to give it to you on a newspaper, which will be exciting watching it first thing in the morning. And I think the chances of dropping water your phone in the water in the pot is far high than having a newspaper messed up. So I think that still for our generation still remains
Okay.
as one of the first choices.
Thank you, Jignesh, for your responses. Let me try answering that from an anecdotal perspective. Just a small story. There was this woodcutter who was looking very fondly at his axe, and there was a passerby who found it very interesting, and he asked the woodcutter, "Why are you so passionately looking at it?" And then the woodcutter told that, "Do you know that this is something that has been handed over to me by my great grandfather. Okay, so it has come across almost some 5-6 generations, and I'm the inheritor of this axe." And then the person who initiated the conversation asked the woodcutter, "Are you sure the same axe that has been handed over to you?" And the woodcutter says, "Of course, yes." Then he asked the woodcutter, "How often has the wooden part of the axe got broken and you've got it repaired or replaced?" He says that I would have done at least some 7 or 8 times. And then he asked, "Has that iron piece been replaced?" "Yes, a couple of times." "And do you think that your grandfather has done that while he was using it?" "Yes, of course he would have done that." And so he admits that there is this kind of a change. Now, then the speaker asked the woodcutter, "Is it the same axe that has been handed over to you from then to today?" Then he says, "Perhaps." Okay, so that's a kind of a context that news industry is in today. I mean, newspaper industry is in today. It's not as though there is complete change. Or for the matter, there is absolute continuity. There is a lot of churning, and there is some amount of change and continuity, like the way in which Pradeep sir was pointing out. So it has gone on to the platform as well. So it coexists in both the platforms. You can get it in the hard copy. It's also there, and it has also picked up some new values, and it has also retained some very traditional values. So that's how at least I see. So it is perhaps the same acts in terms of spirit, but not in terms of the gadget and sorry, in terms of the place where it is used and responded to. Yeah. Yeah. So then there is one question from Ria. What, according to you, can be done to improve public trust in news media? Pradeep sir, yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, it's a good question. Quite understandable, like, because there has been an erosion of trust in general mass media and especially news media because of various reasons. I mean, they think that they are biased. I mean, they are not bringing the truthful news. They are hiding, they are distorting, and all sorts of things. The one way we can make sure that people trust I don't know whether we can do anything to increase or improve the trust that people have in the media, because that is an individual decision. If you want to trust the media or not is your take call, your call. But what we all collectively can do is to make sure that um, good media organizations who do a good job with journalism, we encourage by subscribing to them, following them, and making sure that we don't encourage different media platforms which don't do a good job, So that is one way we can do that. I mean, because this is a democracy, so there is freedom for people to have their own newspapers, broadcast channels, and as long as they don't break any laws, they can go ahead with whatever they're doing. I mean, how fairly they do or not fairly will be their call. But then, so whether we can improve the public trust, I don't know, because that is all in our call, whether we trust. But then we can make sure that the good media organizations thrive and they grow and they do a better job as they go forward. That's what I think
Okay.
is an answer to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So this is the challenge, improving public trust in news media. One of the key things that all good news organizations would strive to achieve is to deliver consistently quality-driven journalism. Okay, and apart from that, like in the case of Hindu, they have got an ombudsman that is uh, a people's editor. So they do have a person, reader's editor, and that builds the credibility amongst the public to say that there is somebody who can speak for me, think about my concerns, and address it to the organization as such, right? So that's another way in which public trust is built, and that's how the Hindu group gains a lot of credits. Apart from that, the kind of work that they do, and more importantly, they also admit their mistakes. So if there is a mistake that they've committed, they are honest and sincere about it and make it transparent to their readers. That's another important value. So likewise, there are a set of practices that would boost one's belief that this platform is better than the other platform and all that. Yeah, there are many other things, but for want of time, maybe we'll wind up. And there's one more question, but I think we are already on time. So Shantanu, sorry, maybe you could reach out to us individually and we shall respond to that. So thank you so much to my fellow panelists for all your wonderful insights. This could have been a great learning for most of the participants here. And I hope you join the tribe and thrive. So best wishes for all. And thanks to all the faculty in Navrachana University. Very glad to see Hitat and Robi and others who are there from the Department of Media Studies, Navrachana University. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you, PK sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, PK sir. Thank you, Hitak bhai. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
I would like to thank everyone for such an insightful session. Also, I agree with Padma Kumar sir that COVID-19 was a curveball for everyone and no one was ready for it and none had experienced it earlier. But despite of COVID-19 turned our lives upside down, it made us self-aware, self-dependent, turned our homes into offices. And we could also see that Jignesh sir rightly said that innovation is taking over the trend. Once again, I would like to thank Professor Padma Kumar for moderating and all the panelists for such an informative and interesting session. Thank you, Professor Varsha, for your time.